Hello, my name is Dr. Danielle Clare. I am very pleased to have been considered to offer a brief overview on the topic of grief and loss during the season of Mental Health Spotlight in your congregation. It is a privilege being a point of reference from Loma Linda University, in which I am a graduate of their DMFT program, as I am a proud doctor of marriage and family therapy. I am a licensed marriage and family therapy supervisor, and I am a registered play therapist. So essentially, an RPT is somebody that specializes in the field of children and families. My work in clinical practice really emphasized on parent-child connectedness and building the attunement between children and families. And while my primary role in this season of life is the clinic director of Loma Linda University School of Behavioral Health, Resiliency Clinic, it is a student training clinic where I have the privilege of overseeing our blooming clinicians offer services and care to patients in the community, and being able to impart my wisdom within their training and create opportunities for them to spread the good news of behavioral health and navigating our behavioral and emotional experiences in the world is truly an opportunity that I'm always thankful for. And then having unique opportunities like this, where I can present on topics that I'm also very passionate about, means the world to me. So stay with me as we cover very briefly some areas of grief and loss. I will be working through general definitions of grief and loss, but pulling towards the end more experiential components to have you step away from our discussion today with a strategy that you can try on throughout our presentation and walking away feeling like you can experience a sense of familiarity with what we talked about in your day-to-day and trying on the skills that I will leave you with. And all of the materials as far as the visuals in this presentation, I'm happy to provide copies for your reference. And if you are happy to review those items, or if you want to speak more about how this particular discussion resonated with you after our talk today, I'm happy to be a witness and to be a presence for you and asking more questions, the next best set of questions, or just to exchange what came up for you when we reviewed some of this criteria today. So grief. Grief is understood to be the natural emotional response resulting from a significant loss. Grief is the process in which we heal an emotional hurt, excuse me. But that did give way to my metaphor of viewing grief as an essence or phenomena of brokenheartedness. So essentially, your heart is broken as you are navigating the grief experience because you have lost something of great value and of great impact in your life. Loss is the fact or process of losing something or someone. So it can be applicable to losing a family heirloom, for example, or just a significant object that meant a lot to you and your family, or to the person that you are no longer like in particular relations with, for example. It is also a state or feeling of grief when deprived of someone or something of value. So again, that goes back to my last example, and being deprived of a relationship that you may no longer be in anymore. But again, in being deprived of not having the person who brought great value again and illumination to your life, it can feel very despondent when you are no longer in the presence of the person that was very valuable and very expensive to lose. Because we really don't have a lot of opportunities in life to be with people that mean so much to us, right? We generally have a handful of those friends in our life. So when we lose one, it is a great loss. Yes. But another criteria within loss that is also important to talk about very briefly is the essence to be lost or left. For example, in losing a parent, for example, so you were left as a child to navigate this experience without the preferred or primary caregiver in your life, or to be left as the other parent. So oftentimes, the other parent is left to continue on the journey of raising up a family on their own, right? So to be lost and to be left is also an experience that doesn't get talked about enough. But I'm hoping after this particular discussion, we can feel a little bit more comfortable in engaging in some of those feelings and early experiences as children. Grief and loss is understood to be a personal process. So normal grief varies greatly between cultures, people, and situations. Grief is understood again to be a natural process and it does not require treatment, which is very true. Just because you experience a significant loss of a person or something, it does not mean that you need to receive like behavioral health treatment, for example. But again, it does not mean that behavioral health treatment is not something that you can use to try on for yourself, to objectively create a space for yourself to navigate talking about your feelings in a way that you may not feel so comfortable talking about with people in your family or in your community groups, for example. But again, going through grief and loss does not make you an immediate qualifier for behavioral health. You can absolutely navigate grief and loss through the support of your faith base and your community and just good people around you. About 10% of people develop complicated grief after loss, which we will talk about in a little bit. And complicated grief, because it is a little bit more of an intense experience, that definitely is a great qualifier for review and oversight and care in therapy. Acute grief, complicated grief, and integrated grief is the general process. So acute grief is something that you experience immediately after a loss and for months afterwards. So it's those feelings that you generally have related to feeling shock, distress, sadness, poor appetite, sleep trouble, and poor concentration. These symptoms generally diminish as time passes. However, you can graduate to complicated grief if you find that with the passing of time, you are not only still feeling the feelings of shock or having poor appetite, but conditions have worsened, meaning now your biomedical health is now taking an impact to the lack of sleep and the poor appetite, for example, right? So again, that's where the dizziness, the drowsiness comes into play, faint spells, for example, definitely more medically inclined, and also socially as well. If you find that you were somebody that was very active as far as being out in the community or being very on top of work, and you suddenly and continue to lack that interest to engage in those things again, can definitely be a qualifier for complicated grief. However, you can transcend to integrated grief. So that's after resolving those intense symptoms that we just kind of reviewed here, you will enter this lifelong stage of integration. So integration is lifelong, it is life lasting as far as its impact because you have navigated on and learned about all of the adaptive coping skills that will help you work through and play through and talk through your feelings as they will continue to come about. So it's understood that it's not that you won't have encounters with grief and loss for the rest of your life, because you will, but you will have a more secure position within yourself and being able to navigate that. So it's allowing yourself that opportunity of momentary sadness and engaging in prayer about it, fasting about it for 24 hours, and then starting the following day with a spirit and element of peace. Yes. So, since we've just kind of reviewed very briefly the personal processes of the different areas of grief, I'm wondering where you would identify yourself at this time. Allow yourself a moment to challenge yourself to say, as I'm listening to this, I feel I am actually in acute grief right now. The feelings are fleeting, right? And they're very fresh, right? Whereas the complicated grief is like, I am still feeling it. I am worried about myself. Everyone is worried about me. And I just am having a really tough time moving on or feeling very guilty about moving on. Whereas that integration is, I am still feeling, like I mentioned, I am going through this particular process. We recently just celebrated a birthday. It was very tough for me, but we were able to host that event in observance of our loved one, right? So allow yourself this space to just kind of close your eyes for a minute and consider where you are in this moment, right? Don't even think about where you were last night or where you hope to be maybe tomorrow, but maybe where you are right now as this discussion helps you kind of remember the way that you felt maybe when you woke up this morning, right? The task of mourning, again, the task of mourning really kind of gives you the general framework for how to navigate the grief response or the grief experience. So there are four tasks, but in our time together, we're just going to focus on task three, which is adjusting to a world without the ones we've lost. But before we get into the task, we're going to talk about mourning. So again, mourning are those general behaviors similar to fasting, praying, hosting particular events in the absence of our loved ones still, praying, right? Going to church and having opportunities to remember the ones we've lost, right? So when we're actively mourning, we're allowing ourselves to be still with remembrance. But also with remembrance, we can continue to sit through the event of remembrance, right? So again, it's the process of adapting to our ability to sit through discussions where this person is being mentioned or talked about. Um, and being able to kind of, again, adaptively work through that. So it's understood that in order to kind of work through the phases of mourning, we are accepting the reality of the loss. So in our ability to show up for that birthday party or that anniversary party, we are accepting the fact that they are no longer with us. While it's very hard for me to be here today, I know that, you know, putting my best foot forward would be something that I know they would be very happy to know that I was brave enough to do, right? And then the second task is being able to be present at the event and process the pain of the grief experience. And adjusting to the world without the ones that we lost is being able to be within that particular environment and share and exchange with people around us. And then the last task here is finding a way to remember them while we move forward with life. So it's being able to leave that particular event and go home knowing that this was a beautiful opportunity and you felt fed by that and you're looking forward to another opportunity or continued opportunities to keep their legacy alive. But as far as task three is concerned, the death of a loved one will usually bring about a number of life changes. So some of those life changes can be internal adjustments, external adjustments, and spiritual adjustments. So internal adjustments can really kind of are more so focused on ourselves. So our identity. So who am I now that I no longer have this person in my life, right? This person was my everything, right? I felt complete and whole in the presence of this person. They were my safe space, right? External adjustments include taking on new roles and developing new skills. So again, now that, you know, we are the primary member of the family. I'm now responsible for making all the medical appointments, paying all the bills, taking the children to school, being responsible for childcare. You are responsible for it all. Whereas before, in addition to what you were independently responsible for, you now are having to do the dance of both and, which can be increasingly stressful, and very hard to do and discouraging, honestly. Spiritual adjustments, again, which we can experience in adjustments, even as people of strong faith, we can definitely feel a rock to our core and feeling like it's not fair. I'm a believer. How could this have happened to me? How could this have happened to them? They are of good grounding faith. It does not make sense. Or in feeling like the world was fair and now we're feeling like the world is not a safe place, and sometimes people can't be trusted now, right? So again, when we're mourning and when we're navigating grief and loss, we can, and it is very normal to feel and experience a modification to our spiritual, our external, and our internal. But my hope with this particular presentation is to help you feel unstuck, because sometimes those adjustments can get us further off track. And my hope is that you can remember what the foundation of your faith and what the foundation of your social supports used to offer you, and how you can find ways to advocate for community for yourself so that you can tread those waters a little bit easier. So riding through the stages of grief, again, I won't necessarily go through all of these items here. I will just briefly indicate each of the stages. And again, these visuals are available to you so that you can review them. And if you have any questions about them, I am happy to walk you through it a little further, independently if you wish, or in a larger opportunity where we can talk for a longer amount of time, and really get into the context of each of these stages. But what you're seeing here is a little bit of an expansion and a deeper process into what we know as the general stages of grief. So those general stages of grief, as you know, or if you are new to the stages of grief, are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. What I think this does beautifully, this handout here, is that it actually deepens your opportunity to be present with your behavioral, your social, emotional experience by, instead of saying I'm in denial of loss, you can now be equipped to say, I am actually feeling misunderstood. I'm actually feeling hurt through this particular experience of loss. Because sometimes when we just rely on that primary construct, for example, within stage 1 of denial, we're limiting ourselves to be able to experience and acknowledge more complex feelings that in turn can help us join more in community, and others can further understand what our experiences are. And honestly, to be honest, sometimes we're not comfortable saying that we're in denial, but it might be easier for you to say hurt. So what I love about this is that it creates a space for a positive reframe for you to choose a emotion or a feeling that feels more accessible and relatable to you. So again, while the stages of grief, the general stages have 5 stages, this handout presents you 6 stages. And sadness and denial between the 5 stages, this is expanded between stage 1 and 2 of the 6 of these writing stages that I am offering you. So very briefly, stage 1 covers that surprised, shock, survival state of feelings. Stage 2 covers the scared, the fear, the panic, the worry. Stage 3 covers those general aggression themes that we feel when we're experiencing grief. So that's that anger, the protest style behaviors of I don't want to do anything, I don't want to go anywhere, feeling out of control of your impulses. So now you are in a season of being very reactive, for example, to stimuli around you, and an essence of powerlessness and maybe even a little bit of hopelessness here. Stage 4 also covers sadness, but what I love about this is that it actually allows you to sit with feelings of sorrow as well. Sorrow is a great way to describe how you're feeling. I feel like anyone can really relate to just feeling very sorrowful about being sad about the loss of someone you love. And stage 5 focuses on those bargaining feelings and those general behaviors that we would do as people, even in the absence of grief and loss. So it's those statements that we use sometimes in saying, well, if I would have answered the phone, if I would have stayed on the call with them a little longer, if I didn't, tell them to go to the store, I could have gone instead and I could have been in their place, and they would have still been here today, right? So again, those are the general processes that we go through when we are navigating, working towards the acceptance, and we find blame with ourselves through that, or even other people. And stage 6, again, very similar to the other stages of grief, is the last stage here. But I do want to be clear and say that while this does show up last, this is not the destination. You do not arrive here and you are suddenly repaired, right? You will always move through processes of feeling sad, of feeling like you need to isolate for a moment, and feeling that hurt and pain sometimes when you hear the name of the person who was responsible for the loss of your loved one. You will encounter those feelings. But the beautiful thing about acceptance is that you actually find that you are noticing that you are getting better with your hopefulness and your faith, and you are beginning to trust your foundation again. You're getting better at letting go so that you can focus while you are at work. But it doesn't mean that when work is over, you'll come home and you will feel sad. It's very normal, it is very natural, but at least when you do get home, you do have some strategies in place and tasks in place that can help support you while you are grieving. So that's that cooking, the baking, or watching that comfort TV show, or taking a bath or shower, and honestly, even working out, right? Sometimes that can really help us deal with our idle thoughts. So if I can allow myself to sit here with you for a moment and just talking about denial, for example, again, this is just our emphasis for this particular presentation, but the example here applies to all the 6 stages of your particular choosing. So denial, as it's indicated here in stage 1, is in good company with other constructs that may be more affirming and again, very comfortable for you to express instead. Essentially, in being able to identify another way of describing how you're feeling allows you to stay afloat in good faith because it actually resonates with you. And again, it allows you the opportunity to advocate for yourself and show up in discussions with others because you can confidently speak from your experience to be able to allow other people to understand where you're coming from. Um, so again, in order to be fully present with remembering and observing our lost ones, we have to be able to dash in those components about ourselves that maybe the person that we lost really appreciated about us. So those words of comfort that allows you to sit with self for a moment is being able to say, you know what, I am lovable and I am a worthy person because, the person in which I lost always described me as being very lovable, right? So again, ways in which that can help you navigate those feelings of feeling shocked and surprised that you no longer have the person around you that really helped affirm that ability to be very lovable, and nobody else around you, for example, is describing or saying those things about you. You can allow yourself to remember that you can still create that space for other people, but maybe even more importantly with yourself by saying, in the way in which this person described me as being lovable and being understanding, was it in the way as what's indicated here on this side? Was it in my way of knowing that privacy, giving them space always helped them feel better? Now, if I was able to do that for this person, am I able to now do this for myself in my grief experience? Can I try to give myself a temporary moment of privacy so that I can process my feelings a little bit better before I start talking to other people about that? Also, again, was I described by this person as being lovable and worthy and being delighted to be in my company because I was able to create a space for them to feel vulnerable and open because they felt safe with me. So how can I create the opportunity to feel safe on my own in this moment for 3 minutes to be able to have a good cry, right? And to be open with my feelings so that when I am ready to talk to somebody about it, I can speak very clearly because I had my own independent moment to pray about it and to process my own reactions. Yes. So strategically, you can do these items for yourself to be able to remain in a position of feeling uplifted, because you are acknowledging that you can comfort yourself very similarly in the way that you comforted the person that's no longer with us. So this particular hand sheet is very task driven. It gives you other strategies that you can try on when you, for example, in stage 2, when you're feeling scared or you're feeling fearful or worried, you can allow yourself to remember that it's okay to feel scared and angry, to write your worries down on a piece of paper and to petition them to God when you are allowing yourself to do your devotions in the morning or in the evenings. It's just a really great tangible tool that you can see really applies to the questions that we ask ourselves, like, why is this happening to me? Because we will sway between those feelings of life cannot go on or what will I tell my family and friends? But it's actually okay to feel very fearful and to feel that panic of how your community will understand this particular loss. Um, because again, we all can relate to the fact that it's not fair to lose somebody, especially in crimes that are violent or in situations of illnesses where it's been a long time coming and you've tried everything that you could do to preserve the life of the person that you cared most about. But how do we really process our experience? Because it's very much easier said than done. But a good strategy of practice that I want us to try on in this time is, or even if you don't feel comfortable in the space that you're currently in as you're listening to this particular topic, because it's a lot to kind of digest, but at least you can take away from this particular conversation and try it on at home. So, and going back to that sheet, right? And being able to pick, let's see, maybe feeling worried, right? Is the term worry something that you can close your eyes and say out loud and confront the worry by saying, I am worried, I am afraid, and I am alone. I do feel alone in this grief experience. Is the term worry, does it really capture this safety net for you to now be able to stand in front of a mirror with your hand over your heart again and say out loud in true declaration that I am fearful, right? It's one thing to just say it out loud and echo it in a room, but being able to observe yourself and see yourself say this can also be very impactful in your ownership of where you are, so that when you are around people, you have a good idea of how you show up when you are talking about these things. And then when we decide to offer our community to be a witness to our grief, we can feel more inclined to express this term in their company, right? So in saying that I do feel worried to other, do I feel ashamed, right? We should be feeling a sense of being unashamed and being brave and being able to know that you are the active chief in your ability to express your worries so that you can find peace. And if you are in places and spaces where you cannot say that you are worried, at least you're doing a process of elimination and being able to know who your people are, who your community is, remembering that your faith, no matter who is around you, is your relying source for feeling safe as you express feelings that aren't so positive when you are going through your grief experience. So we can choose understanding. So seeking to be understood is better than choosing to rely on our own sight. But expanding on choosing to rely on our own sight is also in choosing to rely on our own assumptions of how someone would interpret my grief experience. So instead of relying on that, I'm going to seek to be understood by laying it all out for somebody, for someone, for my community to see me as I am, to come as I am, right? In full abandon of control and allowing myself to believe that this can actually be a new strength of mine, right? To be so overt, or even finding ways to be soft spoken about it too, by maybe writing a letter to somebody about how you are feeling. So again, while the makeup of our faith is not created for us to dwell in dry places, peace and sweet coverings can be experienced when we return to the foundation of what makes up our hope and our faith. So it's understood that faith grows with us as we move along the grief and loss experience. It makes you strong, and it has, again, the potential to be your new strength. So while you may never conquer letting go of your anger, the deal making, the sorrow, the fear, the shock of the loss of our loved ones, faith can be your pillow because it can manage the weight so that you can rest and find joy, a little bit more joy, as we know that always comes in the morning. But cheers to new beginnings and being able to have this level of connection with you at Mount Rubidoux and your congregation, and being able to be um, a great source from Loma Linda University. We do offer support services as well. You are welcome to contact me at the email address indicated here. If you do wish to seek anything independent that you can navigate objectively. So we do offer individual, we do offer group level support services as well. And even if you are not interested in any of these processes at this time, I am available just to follow up with and share and exchange, like I said at the beginning of this presentation. It would mean the world to me to know that this presentation was able to either help you remember what you are capable of, or it actually introduced you to redefining some of those terms that maybe we've heard before, but you can find a way to utilize those terms in a way, like I said earlier, that really resonates with your particular experience. I do want to say thank you all so much for this particular opportunity and being able to be with you and talk with you through this particular topic of grief and loss. It is always a very challenging area of discussion, but I do want you all to know that it is possible to navigate those discussions through the tight grasp of a hand held of somebody that you do trust. So I do hope that we can continue this discussion again when it feels right for you to sit with and find more understanding for where you are in your personal grief and loss journey. I do want to say again, thank you so much for this privilege. And I wish you all the best. And I look forward to meeting you all in person very soon. Take care.